Thank you very much, and I'm extremely glad to be here this morning. And thanks to Ajanta Pharma for year after year bringing about the academics into our ophthalmological practices and helping each one learn from each other. Thank you very much, Saurav, for giving me this opportunity. And early morning, why do we have to talk about phakic IOLs, problems and solutions? Phakic IOLs itself, I've been trying for the last 20 years to get my colleagues to phakic IOLs, karo. और सब बोलते हैं कि अच्छा ठीक है देखते हैं. So everyone is so immersed in their cataract practices that the number of people talking about doing phakic IOLs is limited. Yet I think it's time that all of us immerse ourselves beyond cataract into refractive surgery. And but the idea of this presentation is to tell you whatever the possibilities of problems that can happen in the lens-based refractive surgery are problems that can be overcome. They are not difficult, and each problem has a solution, however difficult it may be. So when do we have these tough situations in phakic IOL? So it's because of the sizing of the phakic IOL, which goes and sits into the eye, and we have to be clear beyond the crystalline lens, clear beyond the cornea, and thereby the sizing is very important. It should not be sized either high or low, and we have to have an optimal sizing. The post-operative intraocular pressure rise is really not a problem, and we do not send our patients to our glaucoma colleagues, and that's something that really doesn't happen. Upside down ICL, and that's the biggest fear for anybody going into the first venture of a phakic IOL. So what happens if it goes in upside down? It's simple. You just take out the phakic IOL and put it back right side up. Lens touch and cataract formation, and every patient is going to ask you, because the Google search is there, and what if I develop cataract? So what if you develop cataract? You just take out the phakic IOL and do the cataract surgery. That's it. So these things are not difficult. Post-operative glare is hardly an issue. Pigment dispersion, not at all, if it has been done the right way. Rotation of toric ICL. So, well, it can rotate and it can be re-rotated as well. So let's look at a few videos and look at them with whatever that has. So this is a toric ICL, and we are placing it in, and what you can see is the toric ICL has got caught in the applicator. These are situations that can happen, but again you need to be very, very judicious, very careful while you're taking out the ICL. And it can be placed very atraumatically in the eye, and it can be placed in the sulcus wherever it is. So it's all important, but why did it get caught in the applicator in the first place? It got caught because when I was loading the ICL, I was not enough careful that the applicator should be well hydrated. And if it is not well hydrated, what happens is the applicator will swell within the cartridge and pinch one part of the phakic IOL. So this is something that you have to be careful about. This is a mid-dilated pupil with an iris coming out. So in this particular patient, I tried my best to have it fully dilated. It was not getting dilated. Ultimately, I placed the lens inside the anterior chamber, and the iris popped out. We need to be extremely careful in these cases, because if we harm the iris, if we traumatize the iris, then that is going to be a scar for life. And every other ophthalmologist, when he examines this patient, is going to ask, who did this phakic IOL for you? So it's important that you place it in as atraumatically as possible, and it can be done. But again, why did it happen? I placed in too much of viscoelastic, which went behind the iris, and that popped out the iris. So it's important that the optimal amount of viscoelastic be placed in the eye as we are placing in the phakic IOL. Now the next one is a stuck IOL. Again, a moment where if it is stuck with the lens half in and half clamped within the main port, then the heart stops beating. Why? Because if this goes upside down, and it can go upside down, then you have the whole gamut of taking out the ICL and placing it back again. So here it was nearly tumbling upside down. I placed in the side port instrument and gradually let it unfold, remembering the fact that the phakic IOL has to go the right side up. If it goes the wrong side up, you have the vault which will touch the crystalline lens and make it difficult. So it has to go the right side up, and there is the leading hole which has to be placed right on the leading right. So let's look at what happens if at all you have to do an ICL exchange. Is it so difficult? It's not really so difficult. And this patient's ICL we had to explant because it was a low vault. So what we do is here we use the high molecular viscoelastic so that one part of the lens prolapses outside the sulcus. This particular forceps, which is the most important forceps, has to go in. It grasps quite easily, but the next part, because you don't need to extend the incision, you have to go hand over hand with atraumatic forceps and remove the ICL from the anterior chamber. Once removed, you place in viscoelastic, place in the right sized ICL, and place it again in the sulcus, and it goes in quite well. You can see that it is dilating pretty well, not too badly. And again, the right side way, the opening of the leading hole is on the right side, and that's the right way to go in. So placing in these haptics is also very important, and you have to catch the haptics right at the end so that it goes in and just smoothly goes into the sulcus, and that's it. Now let me tell you about my heartburn case. Now this young man was a person who had to have a vision of 6.6 because he wanted to get into the police services, and with this amount of vision we did a phakic IOL. He got 6.6 vision in both eyes, and then what happened is about 6 months later he developed a retina detachment. We had checked the retina in detail. There was a treatable lesion, we had treated it, but detachment occurred from another HST which I developed later, and this person came to us. So my retina colleague took it up, and I'm going to blame all this case on my retina colleague, so just be aware, no one of retina is here, I'm sure. So our retina colleague did a wonderful job. I was there with him. The retina was settled. But 3 months later, this lens developed a cataract, and it was a full cataract. So what did he do? He settled the retina, but he touched the lens. So this was a lens touch. So the blame is of course mine as well. So the lens touch happened and a total cataract develops. So what do we do in this case? We have to remove the lens. We have to do a nice rhexis, and we have to put in a lens in the bag. So is that also easy? I thought it was quite easy. I had my retina colleague standing because I told him that you are to blame for this surgery. And I removed the lens, and as you can see, it's nicely coming down. The pupil is coming down. And if you could see that there were a few places of synechia. So these cataracts, we have done so many of them, I'm sure it's going to go absolutely fine. So I demonstrate him like, look, I take out the lens in toto, and that is how we refractive surgeons do. And then my problem starts. So nicely I stain it, and I'm trying to get a nice, neat rhexis where I'm going to put in the intraocular lens of my choice. So of course I have a backup of a multi-piece lens as well. And I am nicely trying to make this rhexis. Trying, and I'm not finding it as easy as it should. And this is what is going to happen. What is going to happen, Mohan Rajan? The rhexis runs out. The rhexis runs out not in one, but two places. So, yet I'm quite fine because I have the multi-piece lens, and if I can't put in a single-piece lens in the bank. So the rhexis has gone out. Just one more minute, please. So rhexis has gone out and the pupil is shrinking. And then I take out the very loose nuclear matter. And this is what I point to my VR surgeon, that look, this is what you did. So that plaque is there right in the center. So even though I place in the intraocular lens, a multi-piece intraocular lens in the sulcus, that plaque is going to be there. So what do we do about this plaque? Now, obviously my heart is sinking because the plaque is not going to let the vision improve very much. So I have to do something about the plaque. So what I do is, of course, here my VR colleague helps me, and we take an MVR and pierce through the plaque. If I go beyond the presence of the edge of that plaque, my rhexis or my opening of the posterior capsule can run out, and then we can have a full blown out PC rupture because the anterior capsule rhexis has already run out. So taking the plaque in the center and using the vitrector to carve out just about 2 millimeters or so of an opening. So this is what we try and plan, and we can make out this opening. The PC stays intact because the plaque is still there in the edge. It has to be done very judiciously under full magnification and a very good cutter. And it can be done, and once we have been able to take off that central nucleus, the central plaque area, the patient achieves not 6.6, achieves about 6.18 of vision and N12. So this really is the end of the story. Of course, he had got his police job, and he still is in the police, comes for a checkup every now and then. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Partha, it was a very nice presentation. Thank you very much. One question is that whenever we are going for the ICL, we always see the anterior chamber depth.
Yes, sir.
So what should be the minimum anterior chamber depth for the ICL?
Yes, sir. So in phakic IOLs, especially the sulcus phakic IOLs that we use, whether it's the ICL, IPCL or the other lenses that are available, 2.8 millimeters of the internal depth between the corneal endothelium and the anterior capsule is the prescribed amount. 2.8, we do not try and differ from that. If it is 2.75, and that's how the graduations are, then we do a gonioscopy to see whether the angles are widely open, and up to 2.75 we can go ahead and place a phakic IOL.
One question and suggestion.
First, you answer my question. Are you going to do a phakic IOL tomorrow?
That's what I'm asking you. I'm sending it to you. Now onwards, I will not send it. So first thing is that for those who are not doing, can they practice phakic IOL in their cataract patient first? I'm just asking it. Before doing your cataract, you place a phakic IOL and remove it.
This is the court martial now.
This is court marshalling me, absolutely.
Mohan Rajan, sir.
Okay, I will supervise that phakic IOL for you.
No. I'm telling you that those who are not doing it, can they practice a demo lens?
Okay, chalo, yes, practice, I will supervise your phakic
Yes,
IOL.
whatever, I will call a person like you to be in the OT and I will do it before doing a cataract surgery.
Okay.
And then
To
I will
answer
move it.
it-
Both the things can be practiced. No, I'm asking for a demo lens. And I think those who are not doing, they can start practicing.
Okay, to answer this question seriously, can you do a phakic IOL in a cataractous lens and in the same sitting take it out? You can, but let us remember that the incision, and if it is a first time incision, it has to be 3.2 or a little more so that the phakic IOL goes in through a 3.2. But here, if you're going to do a cataract in the same sitting, then it's judicious not to go in through that same incision because it's a wider incision. You can approach it from the superior side. The cataract can be done from the superior side in the same sitting. And the viscoelastics, of course, that you have put in have to be washed well, and if you want to stain, the stain can be there as well.
Whatever, yeah, you are correct. But I think the medico-legally we should not do it. If you want to train, get trained, there are both sides, some other eyes are there. But in the human eye, I think when you are doing cataract, and eyes we are ethical people, doctors are ethical people, we should not get trained for some other technique in the cataract. That is my opinion.
Agree, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, I
agree.
completely agree with sir. Because I recently had to explant an ICL in a cataract patient, and it's not very easy. And then, as you have said, it's 3.2 millimeter incision. So I had to shift again the incision because the wound leaks. And I think it's not ethical. The patient should be aware of that as well, that we are experimenting on him, if we are at all.
And so many other things are like, suppose you get on a cataract, it's an entumescent, your AC dips and everything changes. It becomes very, very difficult to put on a lens in a so congested this, and then you do on a cataract, and then you have another complication. So I think if you have a demo eyes today, I mean very nice, you just go, and it's just like on a normal eyes. What are the, just on a question, sir, what are the normal hesitations for in the general public that they get in hesitations? What are the reasons to get in hesitations?
I'll tell you, sir, this is again a question that we have answered, all refractive surgeons have answered at every meeting. It's the possibility of the lens touch and an early cataract formation that deters a normal, very high volume cataract surgeon from doing a phakic IOL. But believe me, with all these years, all the literature that we have in place, it is very safe. The possibility of even a low vault causing a cataract change is quite low. Even if the vault is 100, 125 microns, which is way beyond what the normal prescribed is, 250 to 750 is what is prescribed. But even if a vault is 125 microns, cataract change has not occurred in most of these cases over my around 15 to 20 years of practice. So it's not so big a threat, and it definitely, if it is done well, these problems are far and in between.
I think the calculations are more important in that way. You know, I mean, today you have so many formulas, so many, you know, I mean, you just give them any calculations, they give you a lens. So I think the main important thing is how you measure the sulcus to sulcus, and then probably the things work.
Jagannath?
Yeah. For the sulcus fixated phakic IOLs, should periodic specular microscopy be done?
Specular, yes, sir, absolutely. Because again, if a specular microscopy should be done post-operatively. Yes, sir, post-operative definitely should be done because we are thinking of the long term as well. Pre-operatively to 100% it should be done. Post-operatively also should be done to be assured for yourself that it has been a very smooth surgery, and there are instances where there are low cell counts even in a young individual, and that care has to be taken. And because we don't use a high molecular weight viscoelastic in these cases, and most of us use methyl cellulose, of course Helon can be used also now. So it is important that the sanctity of the corneal endothelium be maintained.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that Dr. Anaga Heru? She is not there. So now I will call upon none other than Dr. Sitara Ramamurthy. She is going to speak to us on complex procedure. Dr. Sitara Ramamurthy.